Imagine a packed chamber in Jerusalem, the air heavy with history and anticipation. On October 13, 2025, President Donald Trump stood before the Knesset, Israel's parliament, declaring that the world was witnessing a historic dawn of a new Middle East. His words thundered through the hall, promising not only an end to war but the end of what he called an age of terror and death. But behind the applause and the headlines that followed lingered questions. Was this truly the beginning of lasting peace or another chapter of promises that history might soon forget? Today we unpack the speech, the deal, and the storm of reactions surrounding what many are calling one of the boldest moves in modern Middle Eastern diplomacy. Trump's speech coincided with a dramatic moment: the exchange of captives between Israel and Hamas. 20 Israeli hostages walked free, and in return, 250 Palestinian political prisoners and over 1,700 detainees from Gaza were released. Many of those Palestinians had been held without charges, some described as having been forcibly disappeared. For families on both sides, it was a day of tears, reunions, and a fragile sense of relief. Trump framed it as proof of what he called his administration's 20-point plan for peace. The plan envisions a stabilization force in Gaza, governance shifting away from Hamas to a Palestinian-led committee, and oversight by a so-called Board of Peace, and chaired, of course, by Trump himself, alongside international figures like former British Prime Minister Tony Blair. It sounded ambitious. It sounded historic. But was it realistic? As with many Trump speeches, bold claims rolled off the tongue. He declared, for instance, that he had settled 8 wars in 8 months. On paper, that sounds like a miracle, but fact-checkers quickly pointed out the exaggeration. Yes, Trump played a role in ceasefires between countries like India and Pakistan, Armenia and Azerbaijan, and even Cambodia and Thailand. But in nearly every case, violence simmered soon after. Disputes remained unresolved, and in some regions, like the Congo and Rwanda, hundreds continued to die despite signed agreements. So, while his involvement cannot be denied, the claim of 8 wars ended was, at best, overstated. The Iran question, one of Trump's most dramatic assertions, was about Iran. He told the Knesset that the United States had dropped 14 bombs on Iran's key nuclear facilities, completely obliterating them. His words suggested finality, a decisive blow against Tehran's ambitions, but the truth is murkier. Intelligence assessments remain classified. Analysts at outlets like the New York Times reported significant damage to sites like Fordo, a heavily fortified underground facility. Yet no one outside the highest levels of intelligence can say whether Iran's nuclear program was truly dismantled. And that uncertainty is exactly the problem. Trump presented absolutes in a world where the facts are still unfolding. Trump also revisited one of his favorite talking points, the 2015 Iran nuclear deal. He called it a disaster, but the record shows that Iran for years complied with the agreement. Inspections by the International Atomic Energy Agency found no major violations. For many, the deal was a rare moment of progress in preventing nuclear escalation. Trump, of course, withdrew the U.S. from that agreement in 2018, reimposing sanctions and promising a tougher renegotiation, one that never came. Instead, Iran gradually reduced its compliance, leaving the world once again on edge. So when Trump speaks of the nuclear deal as a failure, critics argue he overlooks the fact that it was working until he pulled out. Throughout his speech, Trump couldn't resist taking aim at his predecessors. He accused Barack Obama and Joe Biden of harboring hatred toward Israel. It was a striking phrase, and one that experts quickly debunked. Historians point out that both administrations strengthened military and diplomatic ties with Israel. In 2016, for example, Obama signed the largest military aid package in U.S. history, a $38 billion commitment over 10 years. Biden, too, has overseen billions in support and shielded Israel at the United Nations. So, while tensions between Washington and Prime Minister Netanyahu were real, the suggestion of hatred doesn't hold up to the facts. Trump also returned to what he considers one of his proudest achievements, the Abraham Accords. These agreements, signed in 2020, normalized relations between Israel and several Arab states, including the UAE and Bahrain. Yet, the future of the accords is uncertain. After the devastating Gaza war in 2023, a conflict that killed more than 68,000 Palestinians and destroyed 92% of Gaza's residential buildings. The prospect of Saudi Arabia joining the accords has all but evaporated. For many in the Arab world, normalization with Israel now feels politically impossible. So while Trump sees the Abraham Accords as a foundation for peace, critics argue the brutal reality on the ground has eroded much of that legacy. Across the world, Trump's speech in the Gaza deal reverberated. In the UK, Prime Minister Keir Starmer addressed Parliament the very next day. His words were striking. This peace plan would not have been possible without President Trump. It was a rare moment of unambiguous praise for a US president in British politics. Starmer described it as a moment of profound relief, though he also acknowledged the immense suffering that preceded it. The UK, he promised, would play its part, from helping reconstruct Gaza, to supporting transitional governance, to overseeing ceasefire monitoring. Not everyone in the Commons agreed, of course. Opposition leader Kemi Badenoch criticized the government for restoring funding to the United Nations Relief and Works Agency and for recognizing Palestine as a state. But the broader tone in Westminster was clear. Britain, for now, is standing behind Trump's initiative. So what are we left with? On one hand, we see a dramatic prisoner exchange, an ambitious peace plan, and even political rivals acknowledging Trump's role in shaping the moment. On the other hand, we see exaggerated claims, unverified military victories, and a peace plan that remains uncertain in its future phases. History has taught us that Middle Eastern peace deals are fragile, often celebrated with handshakes and press conferences, only to collapse under the weight of mistrust and unresolved grievances. As the dust settles, the questions remain. Will Trump's historic dawn truly light a path to peace or fade into the long list of failed promises that litter the region's history? Will the world remember October 13, 2025 as the day a war ended, or simply as the day another speech was made? For now, the world watches. Families on both sides of the conflict cling to hope. Leaders posture and negotiate, and history waits to decide whether Trump's bold words were prophecy or just politics.